Everyone, welcome back. And in this episode, we're going to carry on looking at the vue-router and what it can do for us. So, taking a look at our profile page, let me actually add a link to here. So, profile, 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 and let me just add some padding to this. I'll take 0 on top and 5 pixels on the sides. So I get a little bit of distance there. Okay, so what I want to look at is profile statistics, all right, or rather different tabs inside a profile. So let's say you go in your profile and you can have stuff like personal information, maybe if it's a shop website, your orders, your previous orders, if it's some kind of social media, you want to see your pictures, etc. So I'm gonna stick with statistics. So let's say you want to see your profile statistics, right? So let's go ahead and make a statistics page. Stats.view. Okay, I'm just gonna quickly scaffold them. I'm not gonna put too much stuff in here. Let's go H1 statistics. There we go. I'm just gonna close this. Close this 404. I accidentally opened it. So in our vue-router, let's go ahead and import stats. Pages stats. Okay. And what we can do is we can specify a children component, which is an array, and this children component will follow the same format as this routes property. So what we want to do here is we want to specify a path, and let's call it stats. Okay, and then we actually make sure this is an object. And then what else we can do is specify the component for it. So the component, I'll take stats right here. Let's format this. Bam. So there's our children with stats. So this is the nested route. So you can think of it as a router inside of a router, right? So hopefully this will make more sense once I go to the profile page. And in here, I'll make another div. And in here, I'll put a router view. Okay, make sure I close off this tag. So if we have our profile and we go /stats, we go to the statistics page, right? So, but yeah, and if we would go to Bob/stats, we would see Bob's profile and his statistics. And if we would carry on adding pages to here, such as gallery settings, right? You could still have your main layout for the profile, but the view, your sort of forms or your whatever you want to display within that container changes. All right. So hopefully this children attribute makes sense. Let's carry on and look at vue-router hooks, right? So you can do stuff with a vue-router. So before entering a route, you can execute some code, right? So there's a special function called before enter. And let's just, for now, let's alert entering profile. All right. Whoa, entering profile. Cool. So, but the profile isn't displayed. So why is that? So it executes this function, and essentially what happens is once we reach this page, it will go into our application, and it will never, you see that this function never returns anything. So it will enter here, and it will be like, that's it, just alert this, and nothing comes out of it. So the properties for before enter go as follows: to, from, and next. All right, so hopefully this is self-explanatory, but in case you don't understand, to is where we're going, from is where we're coming from, and next is a function that we must call to in order to get to the next page. So let's call next here. We're entering profile, and there's our profile. So just so you can see what's where, so to and from, let's console log these, and let's see what we actually get in our form is not defined. Of course it's not. And let me change this to console log because now it's getting annoying, and we can I'll be happy with seeing it in the console. Okay, so let's see what we're getting. Let me move this over and let me make this a little bit bigger. And before we go do this, let's say 2. And here, let's say from. So 2. So if you can see path, profile path, pop stats, this is where we're going to. So you can access this full path and, I don't know, do whatever you want with it, I guess. You can access all kinds of information here. You can access the parameters. And just so you know, it might not be apparent right now, but maybe in a month, half a month time, this is essentially me just planting a seed. You will be working on a problem, and you'll be asking, how do I do this? And then you'll just have a little like boop in your head. There's something like this. He talked about this, and then you go again. You look at this, and you're like, I have all this information here. So let's go to our home page, or rather the login page, and go to the profile, and you can see this stuff pops up here again, and you can see that we're going to profile and we're going from login, and what you do with this is really up to you. I don't think I ever got to use the to and from, or maybe I did use from, but essentially what is this good for? What are the use cases for using before enter? The main ones are fetching some data and updating state. This is really all we do in programming, is moving data around and updating the state. Right? If we didn't have state, stuff would be pretty useful. I mean, pretty useless. So yeah, just remember, when you do a before enter, always call next, otherwise your page won't get rendered as well, right? And these are essentially the use cases, right? So, what I mean by fetching some data, what can you do fetching some, fetching some data? We're going to the profile. What do we want to do? Get the profile info, right? Update state. Maybe there was some old profile information if we are coming from some other page, or basically maybe we want to clean up some background tasks or something like that, right? But yeah, again, they're just, if you ever need to fetch some data or updating state, and depends on when you do it or how often you do it, you want to use the appropriate hook for it. So another times that you can use this hook is inside your component. So you can do stuff like not before create, but before route enter. So let's do console log. I'll just do route enter. But here you also get access to a hook called route leave. Okay, so let's refresh. You can see route enter, and as you can see, same as before, we seem to be entering this profile, but nothing gets rendered. And again, because we need the to, from, next. Let's copy this here as well. And let's make sure we call next. Again, you know how to look at the information that's inside to and from, and if you ever need to know what route you're coming from or what route you're going to in this context and in the context of this component, you can access that information and do whatever you want with it. But yeah, let's go to this profile. Here we see route enter, and if we leave this profile, I would really like to see the route leave message, and that's because I have router leave. And there we go, right? So what kind of stuff we can do there, like save, cleanup, state, and here we can do fetch some data, right? So this is essentially the most useful. This is sort of the main use case that you will have for these guards, right? So let's actually try to do something like this. Let's copy them. Let's go into our home page. And let's put these guards like, I'll say right at the bottom here. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to, before we leave, I want to store this information in local storage, right? So local storage dot set item and key, I will do home form, and string, I will call this string form string. Okay. Now let's do const, not const, let's do let form string equals this dot form, and yep, it will be this dot form, and I want to JSON stringify. So it's going to take this JavaScript object and it is going to turn it into a string, and it's going to save that string. All right, and then in here I just want to do local storage dot get item, and we'll do home form. Okay, and let's do again let the form string. And in here let's just say if form string doesn't equal null, or is it going to be undefined? Might be undefined. Oh, pretty much null. Let's just say or null if it's undefined. And let's do form string and form string doesn't equal empty. So if it's not, let's take this form equals JSON dot parse form string. Cool. So let's go to this form. Let's actually look at our application here, and we'll go into local storage. And all of this stuff has to do with my OpenID Connect stuff, so don't mind this. I'll just delete it for now. And let's leave this page, right? And here you will see inside your application tab local storage for your route. This is the information that we got stored, first name that I've just written, and if I go back to home, I'll get an error, of course. We don't have access to this form here, right? So before we enter, this component is not created, right? So to access the context of this component, we will have to go inside of this next method and access it this way. VM pop. Right, let's console.log VM and let's refresh here, and there we go. So this view component right here, this is what we're console logging here, and this is essentially this view component, right? So before we enter, this component doesn't exist yet. It has not been rendered. That's why we don't have access to its scope and its data, right? So if we want to set anything, we will have to go in here and we will have to set this form manually like so, right? So let's go ahead and move this into here, uncomment it, and we will do, instead of this, we will do vm.form. Okay, let's refresh, and nothing's happening. So let me just console.log Bobo. So Bobo is being called. Form string. Ah, and it's empty. Okay. So my bad. Every time we leave, we override whatever's in our application. So let's go ahead and leave it with this, and then we come back and it's there, right? So let's change this a little bit, and there we go. So more or less, it is working. Of course, there is another way to do this. So let's comment this out, and there we go. So if we type something in, we come back and it's clear again. There is a keep alive keyword, or rather a component. So this is a reserved key component in Vue, and this is something that will preserve your component's lifetime. So any component rendered here will be preserved. So let's go ahead, type something in. Let's go to the login page, type something in here. Let's go back to home, and here it is. Let's not save that for now. And let's go back to the login, and you can see all the components are being preserved. Keep Alive really deserves a video of its own, so I'm not going to be talking about that here, but there will be a separate video for Keep Alive and how to use it. But essentially, hopefully, let's leave this functionality here, and this is what we will be sort of we're mocking up an API access here. So this is something that you would do if you have an API. You'd fetch some data, and before you leave, you'd maybe inform the API that the user is leaving, or you want to clear up some state, you know. Okay, and the final thing that I want to cover in this video are meta tags. So meta tags are actually very useful. So let's go meta, and in here let's specify something like probably most common functional. Let's just call it off, and let's say true. Okay, so what this essentially means is this tag means that this page requires authentication before we enter it, right? And we want to call some things, we want to do something specific for this meta tag. And the way you would access this meta tag is you would usually create a global hook. So let's go ahead, instead of exporting default here, let's create a const router here. Export default router. Let's make sure this still works. Cool. Did I? Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So before we export it, let's take our router and specify a before each hook, right? So before each to from next. So before each does exactly what it sounds like. Before we enter any route, we're going to execute this function here, and let's do this. If we're going, let's take the route that we're going to, and let's check the meta tags. All right. So matched, some, record dot meta, right? So this right here will be the meta tag, and the sum function essentially just checks if there is a meta called off, right? So if this equals true, this if function will be triggered, and in here we will do check if authenticated. If not, so if var authenticated equals true. Hey, so I'm just mocking this up. This is not real functionality. And let's go like actually. So if authenticated, next, else. Okay, we want to redirect to login. So this is what will happen if there is some root with which has a meta off. We will bring that meta in before each, and we'll use this meta to basically govern some or execute some functionality. And essentially what I'm doing here is if authenticated, just go to the next one, otherwise redirect to login. Okay. So at the moment you can see that the profile is rendering and the login and home aren't. That's because for them this meta doesn't exist. So we will have to call next here. Let's not forget that. And there we go. And let's just make a console.log user authenticated, so we can see that it does check for authentication. And there it is. Okay, this will be it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this wasn't too much to go over this, but let's just quickly summarize what we did in this video. We created a some sort of a sub router, or it's essentially like having a class within a class, but a router within a router. So for our profile page, we put a router view inside of there, and the children of the profile page will be displayed in that router. Okay. Next, we took a look at the router hooks, and we can actually execute some functions and basically do something before we enter a certain route, or if we enter or leave a component. So we can do something before entering or leaving a component. And the final thing that we looked at is the meta tags, and how what they're sort of what they're used for, and how can we access them and actually enforce some functionality additionally. And really, why wouldn't you want to do this in a before each hook? Well, some routes require this, and some routes don't require authenticated, like a landing page, the home page. You want people to go on your home page and be not authenticated. And why can we not just put in the before enter? Well, this is easier to do than to specify like a before enter for each route and then call check off or something like that and have the function defined here, or import it from somewhere else and maintaining that function there. So if you just give it a little thought, you will quickly realize that having a meta here and protect the route with this meta is a lot easier than putting that functionality inside a before enter. So this is really just an abstraction. But yeah, this will be it for this episode. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave a comment. If you're enjoying these videos, leave a like, subscribe, and as always, see you in the next episode.